Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome back. Welcome back to the PorscheCooled Podcast. It's Tuesday, it's Owner's Stories Day, and this is number 59 of the Owner's Stories series. Very shortly, I'm going to be joined by Mathieu. Mathieu is going to join me through Zoom, like all these owner stories are done through. Mathieu's coming in from the UK, he's coming in from Essex, and Mathieu has a good story. He's owned a few Porsches. He's got one of my favorites at the moment, which you would have seen in the title. So it's going to be good to have a chat. It works out well for me today because I'm actually in London. This is recorded a couple of weeks in advance, so I'm still in London at the moment. And we're on the same time zone, so it works out very well. So it's a very cloudy afternoon here in London when we're recording this. So anyway, that's about it. As I always say, if you want to be on these owner stories, I have a bit of a list of people, actually. I have still quite a few people to get through. But please do still contact me. Reach out to me on Instagram at PorscheCooled. Give us a follow while you're there. Or at michael.bath on Instagram. Or at P997.1. Just numerals on Instagram. PorscheCooled's probably the best though. So just reach out to me there and just let me know that you're interested. I'll put you down on my list and eventually I will get back to you. It does take some time at the moment because like I said, I haven't been recording as many as I used to, just due to life and just due to things going on. But I will get to you eventually and we will get your story on the podcast so other owners can hear about your Porsche journey and about, your car journey. Anyway, let me just get Mathieu on the line. Let me get Mathieu connected through Zoom, and let's start talking to Mathieu about his PorscheCooled owner story. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to Owner Stories. Like I said, this is number 59 of the Owner Stories series. And today, like I was just saying to Mathieu off recording, it's really good to do an Owner Stories with someone in the UK, so we're in the same time zone. I don't have to stay up late at night. I don't have to get up early in the morning. Mathieu, welcome to the podcast. Welcome to Owner Stories. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Michael. Much appreciated.
I'm glad you can come on. We've been chatting through Instagram. You've been, I follow your Instagram, follow your posts. And I just said to you before, it's really good, the support that the podcast gets and the support that, other listeners are giving me and especially you as well. And when you posted that, the picture of you listening to one of my episodes, driving somewhere, I think it was pretty cool. It made me laugh when I saw it come up. So that was good. Thank you for that. So we always let's just get straight into it because you've had a few Porsches and everyone will know what you own now, your current one, which is one of my favorites for obvious reasons. So let's start at the very beginning, Mathieu, and let's start where it all began for you. And for me, it started later in life. I didn't get a Porsche till, I was a bit older. Some people start early, but the passion is always there for a lot of people, and it starts when they're a kid due to, neighbor owning a Porsche or a friend or an uncle or father in some instances. How did it all start for you? When did you start first noticing Porsche?
Well, first, Michael, thanks for having me on. It's brilliant to be on. I really appreciate the work you and Steve do. So I sort of got into Porsche. I didn't really notice the brand until I was maybe in my late teens. But I've always sort of been into cars from an earlier age. So my brother was into modding cars. So he used to have loads of Fords. He had like Fiat Uno turbos. So he was in that Sierra Cosworth type era. So the Max Power magazines, Fast Forward and stuff like that.
Yep.
And with Porsches, it was, so when I was sort of doing a GCSE art project, so when I was like 16, you had to choose things from, I think it was fashionable. I'm sure it was like fashionable items that you enjoyed. So, and it just so happened I was flicking through a magazine and I saw it was a 996 Turbo, I think it was, that I saw. And I was like, and that was the first time I'd ever really looked at the brand and really thought, oh, wow, that's absolutely stunning. So then sort of forgot about it. It didn't really come to my attention again. Passed my driving test when I was sort of 18. And then my brother went on one of those driving days. So he got to drive a Ferrari, a Subaru Impreza and all these other cars. And so I took him along and I was in my little Ford KA's, my first car, 1 litre. Literally, you could run faster than it on 0 to 60 type thing. And,
very popular, though. Very popular cars.
Yeah, it done a job. Got me from A to B. It's the first car. So I think the insurance on that, remember, it was more than the car was worth. It was outstanding. But
Really?
so, yeah, it was really, really astronomical. So then I took my brother this driving day. So I was just hanging around, just waiting. And then there was a guy there who was part of the team. He said, any spectators want to pay some money, you can drive this. It was a Porsche, it was a C2, it was a 996 C2.
Okay.
So I was like, 25, I think it was like £25. I was like, okay, drive it up and down. I got in it, drove it for maximum 3 minutes. It felt like forever, 3 minutes. And that was it. I was like, wow, I have to have one of these. It was unbelievable. And the guy was telling me, put your foot down. But I was scared. It was just this thing, just the sheer power. When you're going from a Ford KA to a 996, I think it was a 3.4. So in terms of relative to today's power, it's not much. But then it just
even
felt like
still,
a rocket ship.
Yeah, even still from the I call them cars, but the KA, as you call it, like from that to the Porsche must have been crazy. So it was a 996 Carrera.
Yeah.
So how old were you then when you first had that drive?
I think that was about 19.
19. So
I was about 19.
So you're at 19. You're working or you're studying?
Yeah, I was working. So I was working. I was working in cities. First job, so first sort of getting your money and actually buying yourself stuff. And then that day. So when I took my brother, what I forgot to add to that is that drive home in the KA was the worst drive I'd ever had in a car.
I was going to say, you made it worse for yourself, didn't you? You know, you've got the KA, you get into the Carrera, and then it's like, you know, you're working, and obviously for a lot of us at 19, you know, we don't have the funds to buy a 911. I surely didn't. And then I
definitely didn't.
I know, and it's like, man, what am I going to do now? It's like you get to that situation. So what happened after that day then? So you drive the Porsche for the first time. You drive a 911, a 996, which we'll get into it, which is a car that you will eventually own. So you get into the 996. How do you kill that bug for the time being until you can get into your first Porsche? Is there another car after the KA that you buy that will give you a little bit more power, that'll give you a little bit more experience and enjoyment?
Yeah. So after that, I literally, within 3 or 4 months, I was looking at Boxsters and stuff like that, because I was thinking, I want to get into a Porsche, but I can't afford to get into a Porsche. Yep. So I was looking at Boxsters, and they were still quite expensive, because this is like early 2000s. So yep, still really expensive for my budget anyway. So then I came across the MGF. I don't know if you remember the little 2-seater Roadster, convertible. Yeah. So, and that at the time for looks was the closest I could get to a Boxster. Right. And I was like, okay, I'm going to get one of these, because I liked them. They were affordable and they had a bit more power. I just thought, you know what, I'm going to get one, see how I like it. I can't afford that right now. But I had that itch that I needed to get out of the KA and get into something else. So I had one of those, bought one of those, had that for 2 or 3 years. Then I
Was that a big jump up, Matthew? Sorry to interrupt. Was that a big jump up from the KA? Like, I don't know what the price of MGFs were in that period. Was that a big jump?
No, not really. Back then, they were around 5K. A Ford KA at the time, Ford car at the time, they were around maybe 3K.
Right, £3,000. Yeah.
And then, £3,000. And then the MG was around 5,000. From memory, what I paid for it, about 5,500. So it wasn't a massive jump. But Boxers at the time, they were about 15 minimum, bottom end 15K for a second-hand one with higher mileage. So it was a huge jump.
And you're talking early 2000s, right? So they're not they're not super old, are they? The Boxsters either. They're still reasonably new, and there's probably not a lot of used ones on the market as yet.
Yeah, exactly.
So how was the MGF then? Did that give you the motivation to get something even better after that? How was the driving experience of the MGF?
I enjoyed it. It was the first convertible. Well, it's only my second car, so it was the convertible which I sort of enjoyed. It was fun to drive. It had a few problems. They were known for their head gaskets going, so I had issues with it. It ended up costing me a little bit to repair and stuff like that. And then you sort of see what I'd learned afterwards, which is always great. Hindsight, it's a wonderful thing. You learn that it's a false economy type trying to sort of fill that gap with something like that. It's different if you're talking, I don't know, two cars of the same brand, but the quality difference from an MGF to a Porsche is totally different league. So,
But I guess you do what a lot of people do, right? I mean, we always look for something that's almost like what we want. You know what I mean? Like you said, you bought it because it was like a Boxster. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there's lots of cars that people buy that are, they're thinking they're going to get the Boxster or they're going to get the 911, and it doesn't really make it, right? So you eventually go back to the brand. You'll eventually be drawn back in, and you'll eventually, get what you really want. I wonder if in the long term, though, do you think? I mean, obviously you need a car, though, right? But in the long term, would it have been more worthwhile just to save the extra cash and wait to get the Boxster, or you think that it was still worthwhile having that the MG experience?
No, I think it was worth it purely for the power perspective and understanding how sort of a mid-engined car works, because showing my useless driving skills. So when for example, I was literally driving at 30 mile an hour, going around a slow bend,
right?
And the rear of the car started to drift, and I didn't know how to. In the K, that's never going to happen. It's front wheel drive. Yeah. But with this mid-engine car, you just look. I learned. You can't zip around corners just like that. You can't do certain things. And if you go from something like a KA directly if I went from the KA to the Boxster, I think I would have had a lot more problems.
Yeah. So it's a progression, isn't it?
Type thing. So yeah, it's a progression. It is a progression. Sorry about that. I just dropped something. It is a progression, and I think it was a worthy. It was a good thing. It was a good thing to do. Hindsight, it cost me a little bit of money, but for actual driving purposes, it was actually a good thing to do.
All right. So after that, what comes next? Is there another car before you get into the Porsches, or is there another memorable car that you get into after the MGF? Yes.
Well, not memorable. It's just I bought a BMW compact. That's like the squash version of the 3 Series, effectively. And that was literally just. Do you know the one?
I can't remember it actually. Was it?
Yeah, BMW
3
compact.
Series?
3 Series, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a 3 Series compact. So it's just a hatchback version of the 3 Series rather than the coupe. And again, that was just a sort of stopgap car until I could get I always knew where I wanted to go.
Yes.
It was just sort of saving and trying to get there. But the MG sort of packed up on me a little bit, so I needed a car at the time to get around. So that was something I had to just buy, just to see me through type thing.
All right, so MGF, then you go into the BMW compact. So let's start. Is there anything else that you want to mention to the listeners before we get into the Porsche journey?
No, not really. It was literally once I knew I wanted it, that's where I wanted to go. It was just a case of how I was going to try and get there. I wasn't super wealthy or anything like that. I was working my way up the chain, doing my sort of job, trying to save as much money, invest in what I could do to sort of get to this point. So no, that was it. Then I just always had my eye on getting into the brand at some point.
So what did you start looking for, Matthew? So you said, like all of us, money's always a deciding factor. You probably just got your money back on those other cars, right? Did you actually make money on them, or you just sort of got your money back on when you sold the BMW or whatever you sold to get into the Boxster?
No, I lost quite a bit on those, probably about 30%, 40% on those. But I had them for a period of time. So the MG I had for, I think it was 2 years or 3 years. And then the BMW I had for like 2 years.
Okay.
So I think with cars as well, I think we get sort of we get kind of hooked up on how much money you lose on cars, but cars have a value. Cars have an expense value. And that's how I've sort of tried to look at it. Yes. So I know you end up losing money, but a car is a depreciating asset. It's never going to make you, unless you're into classics and stuff like that, which is a totally different story. So when I sort of bought those cars, I was never with the intention to try and sort of get anything back. And I think I had to rationalize it like that, because otherwise you would never buy anything that you actually
true
enjoyed or liked. So that's how I sort of looked at it. So I lost money on those cars, but
all right. So a few years have passed. We're in you can let the listeners know what year, but a few years have passed and you start looking for a Porsche. Do you start looking, is the 911 out straight away? Do you start looking for 911s or you go straight in and start looking for the Boxster?
Well, I started looking at 911s and then only because one sort of came into my budget as such, or I say budget, I was stretching it. I'm trying to kid myself. I was desperately wanting 911, so I was like, I know what I can. I'm sure if I tweak this and tweak that, I can. And I was like, but when it comes to it, if anything goes wrong, then it's a whole new ball game. There's one thing buying the car, but you have to be able to look after it, service it, maintain it. So I was looking at it, but then the Boxster. I love the Boxster, and a friend of a friend had literally bought one about a year prior to me looking, right. And I went out in that, and it was brilliant. It was so I never ever felt like it was a stopgap as such. I felt like it was just part of the journey rather than it being, oh, I'm just going to get this until I can get that. It was, I know I want to get this, enjoy it, and then move on as we all do. So I was looking for maybe 4 or 5 months, and then one came up local to me, good mileage, a few little bits which I did want, which I couldn't get, but it was within my price range, allowed me enough money to keep behind for maintenance and stuff. So that's when I picked that up. I think that was when I was 24, I think 23 or 24. I can't remember.
Okay, so quite young. So
yeah.
So it was a dealer car or was it a privately listed car?
It was a dealer.
Dealer car.
It was a dealer.
Okay, yeah. So what was the process? Tell the listeners about this car, because you bought this car, right? So tell the listeners what the car is, the model, and let them know any options and whatever. And then we'll talk about how the process was at this dealer, whether it was a good experience or not for your first Porsche purchase.
Yeah. So it was a 2.5 Boxster, 1999. It had, funny enough, one thing I was looking for was traction control. Not sure why it had to have the traction. I think it was my experience with the MG and spinning that, which made sure I had that. It had heated seats, full leather. It had the turbo wheels, so it had like the 996 turbo wheels on it.
Nice.
Had painted calipers. And the sound was just unbelievable. It was the sound. When I test drove it, it was the sound. I was just like, oh, it's just absolutely brilliant. The dealer I bought from wasn't, again, as I've got older and you understand, internet's become a lot sort of more sociable. You understand about good dealers, bad dealers. At the time, it was, he's a car dealer, so it must be okay type of thing. But they were, to be fair to them, pretty good. They were a small dealer. They had a few nice cars in their forecourt, but there was no. I bought the car and it was good to me. Touch wood. At the time, I was just praying nothing went wrong and nothing did, and it was a brilliant car. I absolutely loved it.
So you went for the test drive. You went to the dealership. You went for the test drive. Was it a quick decision then? Once you went out on that drive in the car, you were pretty much convinced that was the one you were going to buy.
Yeah, I tried to go in objectively, but
we never do.
Yeah, I told myself, no, go in with your head, check the tires, check this, check that. But we put the roof down, went on the test drive, and I say, Michael, the sound was absolutely brilliant. And that's what sort of just hooked me there. And then I was like, I've got to have this.
Okay, so let's go to my favorite question. Did you get any inspections done, or did you just go with it and just trust that it was going to be not that troublesome and you were just going to pay for whatever repairs came by?
Yeah, no PPI, no anything. Again, I went in with I'm going to get it inspected, get this, and I literally
did nothing.
No, and just bought it. I fell in love with it.
Sorry, Matthew. Did it have a good service record? I forgot what you said. Did it had all the logbooks and good service record or not? How many owners?
Yeah, logbooks. I think it had. I think about 2 owners at the time. So I think because at the time it was only 6 years old. I think it had 2 owners. All the services were done. But when I'm looking at it, it was there's only 3 services in the book at the time, which again for 6 years now we know you get one done every year. But I think the Porsche guidance was every 2 years. So
yes.
It had all the services done. It had a few bits changed on it. So where it had like the upgraded alloys and stuff like that. So I think the person, what I took from it was the person who had it before actually enjoyed the car and looked after it. And it was in very, very good condition. So I was happy to.
Yeah, and it's a pretty new car at the time. Like you said, it's only 6 years old, you said, right? It's still a pretty new car, really. 6 years old is nothing.
Yeah.
So how was it then? You know, you buy it from this dealer, you hand over your cash, you've saved up all this money, and I'm guessing it was it's not an easy purchase. It wouldn't have been cheap at the time. How was that experience when you first drove out of that, when you first picked it up and went for a real drive in the car?
Absolutely brilliant. It's hard to explain, and you'll know because obviously you have an 911. It's not about the speed. It wasn't about anyone looking at it. It was just that feeling it gives you when I had the roof down, just so you could hear the induction Boxster, and it was just that feeling of just this is what I've looking for so long. It was absolutely brilliant.
It's funny you say about the noise, the induction noise. Someone else told me that in a message the other day, how it's is it on the left-hand side, the noise inside the Boxster cabin. And I've only been in a Boxster once, and it was quite some time ago. One my brother had a long time ago. And I can't really remember the noise. I remember you sat quite low. I remember it wasn't that windy. I remember it felt really cool to be in it. I mean, it sounded good. It felt fast. You know what I mean? And this was probably a 2.5 as well at the time. It's probably the same as what you owned. But it's always that noise. So people always make that point about the noise of the Boxster has that great induction noise in the cabin.
Yeah, again, it's hard to explain. But on the 911 noise is for me anyway, it's my own personal opinion. It's a totally different noise to the Boxster. The Boxster at the time for me, the noise I enjoy. I felt like it had a nicer tone, a nicer note to it than the 911. But again, that was from limited experience. I'd only sort of been in one 911 and only ever been past them sort of when they've been driving past me on the street. So I didn't have a great experience. But at the time, sitting in the Boxster, that tone of the exhaust, the induction that's what I loved. And that's what sort of really hooked me into the Boxster when I went to look at it.
So were you living in the city then? Did you park it on the street? Did you have somewhere to park it? Because that's always a concern when you get a soft top, right? When you get something that people can vandalize and stuff like that. Was it parked on the streets in London, or do you had somewhere to park it?
Yeah. So at the time I was living in London. So it was parked on the street. I once came out and someone stuck a mop up the exhaust and stuff like that. You do. And someone, I one day forgotten to lock the car and someone had opened up the door and stuff like that. And again, it's my fault, but at the same time, you hope that wouldn't happen. But living in London at the time, it wasn't the best to have it parked on the street. Someone reversed into it, drove away, so I had to get the bumper fixed and stuff like that. So it wasn't the best for it, and it did sort of detract from the ownership experience.
Yeah, it's distressing, isn't it? I mean, even in Sydney, I used to live in a city in Sydney, and this is going back, early 2000s, and at the time I had an Audi A3, and I used to have to park it in the street, or I had a Peugeot before that, and I had to park it in the street. And same thing even in Sydney. It doesn't have to be London, as any inner city area. Someone jumped on the bonnet, then someone scratched the door. It's just like a common occurrence. It is something that you have to think about, isn't it, when you're buying a Porsche, that, you really do need somewhere to park it that's reasonably safe. Even though I never understand in London, around Mayfair and around there, how there's all these, supercars just parked in the street. I still don't understand how you could park. Yeah. I watched something on YouTube last night, some detailing guy in London who goes around and washes supercars, and there's like just a Ferrari just parked in the street, 2020 model. I just couldn't do it. I don't think I could sleep at night.
No. It's unbelievable. So I work in Mayfair.
Okay.
And so I'm sort of there every day, and you sort of see there was a Carrera GT which used to, before pandemic, there was a Carrera GT which used to be parked on the road.
The white one?
And it used
Not the white one.
I think it was silver.
Oh, okay.
I think there was I'm sure it was silver. And it used to astound me. I just see it parked on the road every day. I'm just like, well, why are you doing that?
Yeah.
It's this absolutely amazing car that you see the Ferraris. There's a 997 Turbo, which is parked just on one of the squares near where I am. The things, and people do it. But I guess it all depends on
if you have enough money.
How
I
much
guess
money
it
you've
doesn't
got.
matter. Exactly. Okay, so let's go back to your cars. So you've got the 986 2.5 Boxster, 99 model, right? 99.
Yeah, 99.
99 model. So how long do you own the Boxster for, Matthew? How long do you enjoy that car for?
So the Boxster I had for around 2.5 years. Yeah,
Okay.
around 2.5 years I had the Boxster for.
And reliability-wise, it was pretty good, because the listeners always like to know if there's any issues with these sort of cars, then and now.
Yeah, but reliability was fine. The only major issue I had was the coolant tank, the cap.
Oh, okay.
I think that's a common issue amongst quite a few of the 911s as well. So that was the only major issue. Other than that, it was standard servicing, MAF, the airflow filter, the sensor which needed to be changed.
Yep.
Other than it was good to me.
That's great.
Again, it wasn't my expertise when I was looking to doing all my checks. It was just luck of the draw. It was.
Well, that's good.
It's really good to me. So I couldn't complain.
So you had it for 2 years. How did you go when you sold that car? Because the previous cars you said you've lost about, you lost money on, you lost about 30%. Was the Boxster, you still lost a bit on the Boxster? Did you go into your second Porsche after that, or was there a stopgap again?
So I lost on that again. I think I must have bought at the height and sold at the bottom on that one, because I took quite a hit on that one. It was when I sold that. So yes, it was 6 years old when I bought it. So 2005 to 2006 when I bought it, and I sold around 2008-ish.
Okay.
So financial crisis time, just before, in the middle. So again, I took a hit on that. And then, so in between then, I was looking for something small to just get around in, which I could park in where I lived at the time, which wasn't the best area, and just not worry about it. So I bought a Mini Cooper S.
Yep.
I thought it would be more economical in terms of insurance, tax, but in reality, I should have just kept the Boxster.
Was it unreliable, the Mini? Because I've heard stories of people, I know some people in Sydney that bought them, and they were quite unreliable in the early days. Yeah,
I had a few issues with it. There was a few leagues that we couldn't track. There was something else. Again, it was one of those things where I gave it to a mechanic to look at, and they were saying, "Oh, this is wrong. Oh yeah, we need to change this." And my sort of technical knowledge wasn't the best at the time. I didn't really have much understanding of engines and stuff. So
was that the reason why you sold it though? Because you were living in London, and it was just not feasible to have a Boxster anymore? Is that the reason? Because you didn't get sick of the car, right? Because you're still a Porsche guy, and you say you changed it to a Mini. Was that the reasoning behind it? Because of just the too much worry?
That was a big part of it. It was, I think it was after it got hit on my road. So after the exhaust, the broom up the exhaust incident, and then someone reversed into it. Yeah. And then because I wash my cars, because I like to see if there's any scratches on any little things. That's the only way you'd ever know. Yeah. And there was a few marks on it, and it was starting to get a bit frustrating, because then these things just add up, and not having somewhere to park it or maintain it was a big issue. So that was a major factor in selling it. And the idea was, okay, sell it, get something else. And I was thinking about moving home at the time, find somewhere with a driveway. And then once that happens, then I can hopefully save and then get another Boxster or 911. That was the aim. So it was a big factor in selling it.
Okay. So how many years went by? So you got the Mini, you've had the Boxster, and then you start thinking, what I really want is a 911. And you start looking for this 911. How long ago was that? And what did you start looking for?
So I had, that was about 3 years. So I had the Mini for, I think, 18 months, 2 years, I think. So my memory is a bit sketchy, sorry. And then
so is mine. I
did write down a few. So I was trying to think, why did I actually have that? Because sorry, I'm waffling here. But so I had the the Mini for about a year and a half to 2 years. And then I didn't have a car for a year because I stopped using it as much at that point. So I'd met someone, we sort of settled down. She had a car. So it was, okay, let's sort of use your car between us and we can save a bit of money, this type of thing. And then I think it was around 2010, 2011. So about 3 years after I was just again, I never stopped looking. And that's one of my biggest problems. Even when I've got a car, I just continue looking at the classifieds. So I was looking, just browsing, and then one came up, and the price, I was shocked at how much 996s had fallen off from when I was looking when I bought the Boxster.
Right.
So at this time, you could pick up a half decent 996 for around 14 to 15. And if you wanted to then pick up something which maybe needed a little bit of work, you pick one up for like 10 to 12K.
So that's about how many years ago? 10 years ago? 8 years ago?
About 10 to 11 years ago, yeah.
10 to 11 years ago. Okay, so you found a 996 then? What did you find?
Yeah, so I found the blue 996, 3.4, had a sports exhaust. It had, I think I'm trying to think what that was. I've got pictures of it. It had black interior. It had the stereo swapped out, so it had all, so you can have Bluetooth and all that stuff. Again, but the one that I bought, I found was, I think I paid 9,500 for it.
And what year was that, Matthew?
It was in 1998.
1998. So first gen.
Yeah, it was
first gen.
Yeah, first gen. Yeah.
996. And when you bought it at the time was about 12 years old. Probably about the same time when I bought my 997. It was about 12 years old when I bought my 997 as well.
It's about 12. Yeah, about 12 years. About 12 to 13 years old. Yeah.
So was it a manual or was it a tip?
So, manual. Yeah.
And
I've always flirted with the idea of a tip, but I've always stuck to the manuals.
Nothing wrong with the tip, though, right? Nothing wrong with the tip.
No, nothing wrong with it at all. It's each to their own, as we say.
So where was the car? You saw it was a private seller, so you found it online, or you found it in the newspaper. Where did you find the car, and how did you go about getting this one? Did you throw a dice again and say, I'm going to trust my luck and not do an inspection? Is that how it worked?
Yeah, well, it was on Auto Trader, and it was about 45 minutes away from where I was living at the time. It was a trader who worked from his house, so it was a private sale, but he just dabbled in cars. He had a few nice cars. So I went to look at it on the weekend, and again, I went in with my head, no, I'm going to get an inspection. I'm going to do this. No, I'm going to have this look and do this check. But I got in again, and it sort of just took me by. I was just like, I need to have this. I just got no willpower whatsoever, and it totally sucked me in. So the car itself, again, was a good car. It was clean. Done all the sort of necessary checks that you do on the number plate, VIN, all that stuff. And that all came back fine. Had a look around, took loads of photos, and sort of asked my brother just to have a quick look just to see what he thought. Because of the price, I thought it's going to go pretty quickly. So you sort of had to move quick. But this one, again, so I forgot something I should have mentioned. This one had about 90,000 miles on it. So the mileage was pretty high.
Pretty high.
But again, looking through the service book, it had been serviced very regularly, and something told me that it was fine. I don't know. Again, maybe that was just me convincing myself rather than it actually being fine. But again, I took a chance. And
how many owners did it have? Do you remember?
I cannot remember off the top of my head, but they weren't very high, because that was one of the things I look at. If it's got a high mileage and loads of owners, it would sort of throw more alarm bells than if it had high mileage and a low number of owners. So this one I'm sure it had low owners, which is why I went to look at it in the first place.
Is this Midnight Blue? Is that the one on your Instagram, the very first image on your Instagram?
Yeah, that's the one, yeah.
Okay, I'll just let the listeners know actually while we're on that. If you go to Matthew's Instagram, give him a follow. Make sure you heard his story on Owner Stories. It's at midnight.997, at midnight Mathieu.997. So that's Matthew's Instagram. It's got pictures of his cars on there and a few other cars as well, a few other Porsches. So that's the very first image. That's a nice color in the 996, that midnight blue. It's a very good color.
Yeah.
So how was it at that time? Because I can't remember. How was the thing with the IMS? Was that something that was in people's minds at the time when you bought that car, or was that something you knew about the IMS, or was it something you didn't even think about?
Being honest, it was one of those things. The internet wasn't. It was something that we could use for a resource, but not as we do now.
Yes.
The number of there weren't that many forums. There weren't that many. YouTube wasn't a big thing, so it's not like it was something that was well publicized. So
yes.
I'd heard about it, but I didn't sort of know enough. And then it's only after I bought the car where I started doing a lot more reading, buying a few more magazines, and you'd read about the RMS, IMS,
yes,
and then also bore scoring, but that was sort of more prevalent to the 3.6s to the 3.4s.
Yes.
And it was only after I sort of bought it that I started to read a lot more into these things. Again, some people say it was overblown, but if it happens to you, then you're in that 100%. So it's not overblown. So it was something I wish I'd done a bit more reading on before, because to be honest, reading about it afterwards did sort of sour a little bit, because you do then worry about it if you haven't got the full information, which at the time information wasn't available as readily as it is now. So yeah, it was a little bit of an issue, but it was again, at the time, just touch wood, and it was fine for me. But yeah, it wasn't something I was fully aware of.
So let's go back. You're buying the car. You don't do a proper inspection. Your brother helps you out. You check it out. You do the deal. It's a good price. It's got high mileage, but you know it's going to go quickly. So now you've gone from, you've had no car for a bit, and you've had other cars in between. How does it feel, though, from when you have that memory of the Boxster, Matthew? You have the memory of the Boxster in your head, the mid-engine Boxster. Now you're in a rear engine. You're in the 911. You're in the 996 that you remember driving when you were 19. How did it feel? Was it still that same memory of that first one you drove, or was it even better?
It's better. It was better than the first one I drove. Because when the first one I drove, we sort of just went in a straight line. But where this person lived, there was quite a few country lanes to come home, and it was just fantastic. The way it handled, I didn't push it because I was a bit nervous. I was really nervous. Not gonna lie, I was really, really nervous about pushing the car. But just going through, and the way I'd never experienced how the Boxster and the 911 drive. They do drive similar. From my memory, they drive similar. But I felt like the Carrera just felt a bit more planted to me. I don't know what it was. It just felt, you go around corners, it didn't feel like you moved at all. It was absolutely brilliant. And with this one had a sports exhaust on it as well. So that noise, it was a different noise. It was a raspier, louder, but it sounded absolutely brilliant, especially when the time of year I picked it up, you're going through these lanes and there was all the trees sort of overhead. So the sound was sort of kept in. You put your foot down, you hear that rasp.
Yeah, good feeling.
It was unbelievable.
So that was a OEM Porsche sports exhaust, was it, or an aftermarket one? Do you remember?
That was an OEM Porsche sports exhaust that was on there. So yeah, it sounded unbelievable. It sounded brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
Fantastic. So how did you go with that situation with the car then? Are you still in central London? Are you still parking on the street, or now you've got somewhere else to park it where it's a bit safer?
So at this point, I'd moved a little bit further out of London. So I was on the sort of cusp. It's just inside the M25. So I bought a flat, but I had sort of my own parking at the front, but we didn't have a driveway. It was still on the street, but it was a lot quieter.
Right.
So it felt fine. But in reality, after a couple of months, you realise, well, any road you park on is a road. It's just because it's a quieter road doesn't make it.
Yeah, true.
And I had, again, a few issues, people scratching it, etc.
Oh, really?
When they're sort of parked. Yeah, just not maliciously, but parking scratches. So someone pulling out. But then a lot of the time, is what I was using the car for as well, is because it was my only car. Sometimes when I play football on the weekend, so you go drive to football and you're in a car park. Right. You drive here and you get little dings, and it's just it's part and parcel of it. But at the time, because it was my car that I loved it. Any little scratch, any little mark, it would send me into overdrive. I'm really annoyed about it type thing. So yeah, it was
it's hard
frustrating.
though when you're using it as your daily almost, right? You're using it as it's an everyday car almost. But I guess you can sort of justify it a little bit. It's it's still a lot of money, but it's not a lot of money. So I guess you can sort of justify it that way. But it's still a possession, and I'm like you. Any little market just drives me crazy. It makes it really difficult. So how long did you have the 996.1 for?
I had that for 18 months.
18 months?
18 months. I didn't have it for that long.
So what was the deciding factor when you decided, okay, I'm gonna move this on?
I just moved, and I was doing some renovations to the property that I'd just bought. Okay. And I was just weighing up everything because I think I'd put maybe 500-600 miles on in the last 6 months of having it. Right. In total, I put on about 1,800 miles in the 18 months. But in the last 6 months, I literally put on maybe 200, 300 miles maximum. Okay. So I was just like, I'm not using it. It's sitting on the street, and I just felt like maybe I'd get rid of it, do the bits I need to do at home, and then once I'm sort of settled again, I'll start looking again for something else. So that was part of the reason. I just wasn't getting used. It was sitting on the road, and I just felt it was a bit of a shame. It was just sitting there. So,
okay, so lack of use in a way, you decided to move it on.
Yeah.
So how did you sell it? Did you sell it to a dealer, or did you list it privately and sell it yourself? So
I sold that privately. Okay. I sold that privately. Quickly? It took a while to sell. Oh, really? No, it took a while, funny enough. Yeah. I think I just must have sold it. It was in really good, the car was in really good condition, had all the services, had suspension. I had to end up changing the rear suspension. So it had all the upkeep done, but it just ticked over it was going to, because you're in the 90s. I think a lot of people see it as, oh, well, it's going to get to 100 soon, so I don't really want to be because once it goes over 100, then they feel like they lose. It's that magic number. Everyone seems to get hooked on the 100,000 miles.
100,000 miles,
so where it was, I think it was at 93 or 94 when I sold it. I think that put a lot of people off.
And how did you go, though? You don't, not to mention prices, but did you say you lost money in this as well? The prices of 996s were still dipping at that point?
Yeah, they were still dipping. So I think I lost about 20. I think I paid just under 10. I think I sold it for 7 and a bit, I think. Okay. So yeah, I lost a little bit on it. Again, but it's just the market just at that point in time seemed to just fall off a cliff.
It did, didn't it? That around that period. So you've had the 911. You've had the dream car almost, so to speak. And then you decide to sell it because you haven't been driving it, right? Other things are happening and you haven't been driving it. You've got a new house. You've been doing renovations. What happens to make you get into your next one? Because there's more to come. We're not finished yet. So what happens? What happens in that period where you decide, okay, I want to look for another 911?
I think it's the ticking over into 30.
Oh, really?
I hit 30. What? I think I was 31 or 32. Right. At that point, and I was just like, I missed it. I know I didn't drive it much, but I really, really missed not having that 996. Yep. Just, I think it was funny enough, one of your last podcasts when you said the fun of driving nowhere. I just missed that. I'd sort of stopped playing sport as I was getting older. I stopped playing football, and that was my outlet. And I just not having it. I just really missed it. So that's why I got into. I started looking again, looking at the classifieds, eBay, Auto Trader, Gumtree, the lot, just sort of keeping a feeler on the market.
So how many years ago was this, Matthew?
So when I sold it, or
when you started looking again, when you started looking for the new 911?
I think about 6 years ago.
6 years ago.
So yeah, 2015. 6 years ago.
So you're starting to look, you're looking at 911s again. You're not looking for Boxsters, right? You're still looking for the 911. You want to stay in the 911.
Yeah, stay in the 911, yeah.
Okay, so do you think, okay, I really enjoyed the 996. I'm going to look for a 996.2. I'm going to get the newer version of the 996, or do you think, okay, I'm going to look for a 997? Or a 991, but 991's probably still too expensive, right?
Yeah, they were. Yeah, the ones were well out of my range. So at the time, the market was still quite soft. So I looked originally at 996.2s. I was looking at the Carrera 4S.
Okay, nice.
Funnily enough, but the reason that I didn't go for that was the interior, because I felt if I get that, you're still sitting in the same cabin, and I just wanted to have a little bit more refined. And I did feel like the 996 interior, once you'd sort of sat or looked at a 997 interior, for me personally, just the lines were more sharp in the 997. It just felt a little bit more.
They are.
I think forward in time.
Yeah, I think with the 996, so it's a really strange one, because my wife's boss used to have a Carrera 4. He had a Carrera 4. And I remember the first time I sat in it, and I think I might have mentioned this on an early podcast, and it felt luxurious inside. I never thought when I sat in that car for the few times I went for a drive in that car, I never thought, wow, this interior is really dodgy. It's not that very nice at all. You know what I mean? It's really weird. Even at that time, I thought it's okay. But we kind of, like when you see photos of it doesn't photograph well, the 996 interior. It really doesn't photograph well.
No, it doesn't. No.
But I just, and it's a weird thought, because I think, we all talk about the interior of a 996 not being that great, but I remember sitting in it and thinking, wow, this is pretty nice. The 5 dials and the dash, and, it seemed very special at the time. It's weird how things change. It's weird how things change. So you wanted something different. You don't want to sit in the same surrounding. You want to go up to the next generation.
Yeah.
So how does the next 911 come about, and what is it?
It was a 2006 silver 997.1 C2.
Same as mine.
It's carbon copy of yours, Michael. And I was
Arctic silver or GT silver?
Arctic silver.
Okay.
Yeah, it was Arctic silver. So
manual?
Manual, yeah. Sorry, 6-speed manual. To be fair, it was bare bones, this one. It didn't have Bose. It didn't have the PASM. Didn't have heated seats. It was someone had spec the car. How can I get into this the cheapest way possible type thing? Yep. That's what it was. But I was looking for a while. I was looking at, say, I was looking at the C4S. I was looking for 997.1s. Originally, I wanted the C4.
Yes.
But the C4, I didn't want a 3.8. I wanted the 3.6.
Yes.
But the C4s they're rarer, a lot rarer, and they were a lot more expensive at the time.
Why did you want the C4? What was the reasoning behind that, Matthew? What was the reasoning behind the C4? Because it's not everyone's choice, and like you said, they are pretty rare. There's not many out there.
Yeah, I wanted to try the 4-wheel drive. I was just where I had the C2 in the 996. I just wanted to see what the 4-wheel drive. I just wanted to, because again, it was just getting a little bit more difference. So I just thought, okay, and the difference in the width, because it's only when you really look at them, if you know what you're looking at. But I can straight away see the C4, the difference between the C4 and the C2, because I've stared at 997s for so long. I can see the difference. Yeah, but it's not when I was originally looking. I couldn't really see it. But then there is that difference, which a lot of people do say, actually, because when you look at the C4S, it's that width does give it that bit more of aggressive sort of stance.
Yeah.
But the C2 was still sort of part of the shop, quite high up on the shopping list. It wasn't a case of, oh no, I want the C4, I don't want a C2. I didn't like the C2. It was C4 if I can find one, but I love the C2. So it wasn't any ever.
Sorry, did any C4s come up? Was there any that you looked at and were tempted? Nothing.
No, nothing. Not in my price range that I was tempted by. A lot of them either had mileage was too high, or they were low mileage and really expensive. So there was none which fit into my bracket. I was looking for one in and around 65,000 miles. Okay. But it was either really low mileage or really high. So
you're going up in the price range here, aren't you? Because I can't remember the price in the UK at the time, but from a 996 to a 997, you are jumping up quite a bit, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, huge. So at the time, I think 997s were more early 20s.
That's what I was thinking.
For the range I was looking at anyway. There would have been more that were a lot less, but what I was looking at, they were sort of early 20s, and 996s, again, you could pick those up for 10, 12s, 13s.
Yes.
So there was a big difference in the price.
I mean, the C4S, if you would have bought a C4S at that time and still had it, you would have made money on that one, that's for sure. 996.
Yeah, 100%. So at the time, they were...
That would have 15, been an appreciating
14
asset.
Or 15. Yeah, that definitely would have been an appreciating asset. And funnily enough, at the time, I was trying to convince myself I had enough money for a 996 turbo, but I didn't. they were early 20s. They were early 20s at the time. Early to mid 20s, depending on mileage and year, etc., etc., etc. But you could pick up a 996 turbo for in between 20 and 25. But then that was how many years ago? So
that's still more than what you paid for the 997?
Yes, that was more than what I paid for the 997.
Okay, so how did the 997 come about? Sorry, how did the 997 come about? Was that in a dealer, or how did you find that one?
No, so the 997 was a private sale. So there was a gentleman on a forum, it's a 911 UK.
Yes.
And I kept just looking through the classifieds, and he posted, got his car for sale, etc. So I said, okay, he's on a forum, which means I know you shouldn't make the assumption he's into his cars, because you only ever join a forum if you're into what you're looking at.
Yeah.
So I went to go look at it. He lived in the country somewhere, nice big double garage, carpet as you walk into his garage. He was a mechanic by trade for the civil service.
Okay.
So he knew his cars, and the car was immaculate. Everything he'd done, he kept receipts, logs, everything that he'd changed. He kept the old part, so he could take photos of it, so he could show you what had changed, this, that, and the other. Right. And the car was, again, it was bare bones, but it was clean. It was a really, really good car. So and it was that which made me buy the car this time. Rather than, I did want a few of the extras like Bose, and I was hoping to have the PASM and Sports Chrono, but again, on 3.6s they're a lot more rare on the 3.6.
Yeah, mine doesn't have options. Mine doesn't have that. Mine doesn't have PASM. It doesn't have Chrono. Mine doesn't even have Xenons. It just has the standard lights, which is probably the main downfall. I think that the lights are just, once you've had Xenon lights or any sort of electronic lights, the base lights are very yellow and very dim. Not great.
Yeah, but I don't think mine have got Xenons either, actually.
I bought some bulbs, actually. I bought them from somewhere in the UK. I forget the name of this, some site that just sells bulbs. And I bought them to change it. I read it on Rainlist or something. I forget what they're called now. To change the actual bulb in the lights, which make it brighter. I probably do want to get back, actually. I've still got them. I just never got around to pulling it out and putting them in.
It's definitely something worth it. It's definitely worth it.
The lights are that's the downfall. I mean, like I said, you can do without the without the Bose. Bose is okay. Mine's got Bose. That's one of the few things it has, and it has a sunroof. But that's about it. Telephone module, which is obsolete now, doesn't even work. But I think the lights are the main. I think even when you buy a new 911, don't you think, Matthew? I think the main thing you want is you want the exhaust, you want the good lights. They're kind of things that you'd have to pick if you had the money to spec a new 911.
100%.
So
100%.
You're into the next generation. So you're going through the models here. You've had a Boxster, you've had a 996.1 Carrera 99, and now you're in your 06, same model year as mine. 06 997, which has the larger IMS bearing. I'm guessing yours has got the larger one if it's an 06.
Yeah.
Yep. Arctic Silver, manual. Yep. So how was the difference? And let's just talk about the driving experience. What's the main thing you noticed between the 996 and 997? Were they really, really similar, or was there a marked difference?
No, they were remarkably similar, if I'm honest. I think the 997 just felt more comfortable from the cabin perspective. I felt that the cabin is more comfortable in the 997. But again, that may be just because I like it more, not because it actually is, if that makes sense.
Right.
They drive very, very similar. There's not much difference in them. This one had a tiny bit more power.
Yeah, I was going to say a little bit.
Power's not power is not something I'm really hooked up on. And I'm not 0 to 60 in, so it's got to be 0 to 60 in 2 seconds kind of guy. So, and they were very similar. I preferred the lines on the 997 in terms of the headlights at the front. There's not much in the shape of the, obviously we all know they're very similar, but the headlights were I just preferred the look. And I think I just felt more, if I was still in my old 996, I'd always be looking at the 997 thinking I want to be in the 997, but being in my 997, I didn't look at a 996 and go, I want to be back in a 996. If that makes sense.
Yes, it does. Yeah. So you've got the 996 you had the sports exhaust. It had the OEM sports exhaust. Yeah. The 997 doesn't. Was that something you wanted to upgrade? Did you do anything to the exhaust, or you just leave it how it was? Because you would have noticed that straight away, right? Because the 997 is quite soft in base form. Mine was very soft before I did the Fister mod. Yeah,
very soft. So that was one of the things I wanted to upgrade, but I didn't in the end do it. And it is noticeable. It is very noticeable. The sound, the sports exhaust sound to the standard sound, so to speak. So that was on the list of things to do, but something I never got around to doing. So that was the one thing which I missed from the 996, but there was also that was something which you could rectify quite easily.
So you enjoyed that car? Did you get to drive it outside of London and feel the speed and the experience of it, or were you just driving it around London?
Yeah, well, I had it for about 2 weeks and the water pump failed.
You had it for 2 weeks? Okay.
I had it for 2 weeks and the water pump failed on me, but that was, again, something that's pretty common, water pump failure on the 997. And then about another month or two later, I was having an issue with, it's like a hot start problem. I'm not sure if you've ever read about it. If you've been driving the car for a while and the engine's hot, if you turn it off and then go to crank it again, it doesn't crank.
Okay.
So I've read about it on forums. I don't know how common it is, but again, that was another issue I had. So it cost me quite a bit, even though it was meticulously maintained. These things sort of rear their heads.
Yeah, because it was a well-maintained example, wasn't it? It's a real. I mean, these are just things that wear out after time, right? I haven't heard about that hot starter thing. I've heard something. I remember something that was on Renless where your car is running. You turn the key to turn it off, but it doesn't turn the key off. It doesn't turn the car off. I don't know whether that's the same issue. Yeah, but it still keeps running like this. It must be something to do with the ignition or whatever, I think it was. I remember reading about that on Renlist.
Yeah, so the issue, the hot start issue is there's a cable which runs from front to back. Right. And over time, the conductivity of it starts to fail. Right. So when you it's fine on cold start, it will crank spot on, not a problem. Okay. But you've been driving it for a while. Once it's hot, if you turn it off and then go to turn it back on straight away, it doesn't like it and it doesn't crank. Oh, right. It doesn't turn over. And it was quite dangerous because if you stall it in the middle of a busy junction, then you're sort of stuck. Again, that was something I had to get changed, and that wasn't cheap.
So what do they have to do to fix that? It's expensive, is it?
It's a loom, yeah. It's a whole loom which needs to be changed.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, it wasn't. But luckily, again, so when I bought the 996, I started researching local Porsche independents. Yes. This was something I wasn't really aware of before. And I found a guy who I've taken all my cars to since, and he's brilliant. He knows his stuff when it comes to Porsche. So it was expensive, but it was a lot cheaper than if I'd gone to a main dealer to get it done. So it was... not a good time.
Not a good time, no. So the water pump, you've got the wiring. So this is, as you said, it's a really well-maintained car. The guy had records of everything. The guy's genuine that sold it to you. These are just things that would happen. And, these are things, even if you got a PPI, they're probably things that wouldn't have even turned up on a PPI. You know what I mean? No. They would turn up later. And a lot of people say this. They get a pre-purchase inspection, everything's fine, and then they drive it, and then the next day something happens, something really bad happens to the car. So it's not a fail-safe thing getting a PPI. Yeah. So was there anything... So the ownership experience of the 997, because now you're in a new generation, did anything else happen to the 997 that was a big cost during that period?
No, so it was just... those two were the main things. I should have said, actually, I did get a PPI on this one. The first time I did get a PPI. Okay. Yeah, I did get one on this. On this one, I did, just because it was a private. So where the other two were sort of dealers, and you had some sort of comeback, I thought, no, it should be fine. Yeah. With this one, I got a PPI, and again, those things just you can't account for them. But
so nothing showed up. Everything was okay.
No, yeah, everything was okay. Yeah, so yeah, it was those two major problems that I had, which caught me out.
Yeah,
it was. Other than that, again, to be fair, the car was good to me, but I didn't again do many miles in the car for anything to show up. But yeah, it was pretty good to me. But to have those two things in your first 6 months are quite big.
It's not a good feeling, is it? It's not a good feeling at all. So what happens then? So you've got the 997. You don't have that car anymore. We're going to get into that, what you have now, which is a good story because you have something similar. So what happens? Why did you sell that one? Did you sell it because you were the lack of driving? Did you sell it because what was the reasoning?
No, this time we'd just been taken over at work, and I had an inkling that things were going to start to go south. So I sort of set myself up to prepare, and it happened. So we got rid of that whole department, got taken over, got taken out of work. So well, in hindsight, I didn't need to, because luckily at the time I literally finished one job, started the next one on the next week. So there was no gap in sort of any employment.
Yeah.
But I was just preparing for a just in case scenario. So and that was the reason I got rid of it this time. And that was the worst decision I made.
So when did you sell it, Matthew? What year was that?
That was 2017, I think. 16.
2016. Okay. So let's get in.
So I had it from...
So you had it for a couple of years, did you?
Yeah, but again, another 18 months to 2 years.
And you just said you regret selling that car because it was such a great car?
I regret selling it because, everyone will know what I've got now. I've sort of replaced it with something very, very similar. And I wish I would have had more time in that period of time where because the amount of time that's gone, the amount of money I've actually then had to put into another one, I wish if I'd kept it, I would have been a lot more up. The prices
have shifted crazy on 997, so it's and due to the 996, prices on the 996 have shifted crazy, right? Yeah. And we always talk about values. I know Steve always hates it, but we always talk about values. Yeah. But this is why I want to go back to the message you sent me. And you sent me this message, and I went back to my DMs because I remember this message and I just had to refresh my memory. In January, you sent me a message in January this year. Yeah. And you said you wanted to get back into either a base 997 base or a 4S or a turbo. And obviously it seemed from that message, and I remember reading it when you sent it to me thinking, it sounds like you really want a turbo. I like the turbo. I like the 997.1 turbo if you can get a 997.1 turbo in manual. But those prices have gone crazy as well. So, exactly. They were sitting there and now they're just insane. And then in May, you sent me another message, and I'll let you tell the listeners, you found something else and you literally replaced what you had before. Is it exactly the same or is it different? Tell the listeners what happened.
I'll go back to the original message I sent you. It was, I was looking at 997 turbos, but I was sort of getting lured into the Tiptronic. It wasn't the manual. So the Tiptronic Tiptronic slipped into my price range. Yep. And I loved that. Being honest, the 997 turbo is my dream car, but it would have to be a manual. And I've actually sat down and realized if I'd bought the Tiptronic, I would have forever been wanting it to be manual. And when you're spending that sort of money, you have to be sure. You can't buy on a whim. You can't. I'm not about talking figures. Spending £7,000, £8,000, £10,000 on a car because you need a car is one thing, but when you sort of going into those realms, you don't want to make a mistake because that's a lot of money. Yes, £10,000 is a lot of money. Yeah. So then I started. So the 4S again. So then after I looked at that Tiptronic, that went because I realised I couldn't afford the manual, and the Tiptronic would just be a stopgap, half-baked sort of idea. So don't get me wrong, great cars. The Tiptronic, great car. Before I get any people saying me, they're slating me. No, they are great cars, but I just for me, my own personal, that's not what I wanted. So then the 4S came up, a 997 4S.
But aren't
only
they about
issue-
40,000? Aren't they sitting at that 3 years ago? Still sitting at 45,000 pounds, somewhere like that. 4S.
The 4S.
Yeah.
No, so the
No?
997.1 4S, the one that came up as a private sale, it had 60,000 miles on the clock. This was back end of last year, or maybe beginning of this year. I can't remember the exact time.
Right.
It had 60,000 miles on the clock. Black, just been serviced, had all the suspension arms done, all that stuff, and that was at £26,000.
Wow, that seems very cheap.
Yeah, it was really the guy. Originally, it was up at 29. It was sitting on Auto Trader for a good few months,
Right.
and I just kept watching it, expecting it to go, and it never did.
Right.
So then that went down to like 26, and I've spoken to the guy. I said, "Okay, what were your best?" And he still wanted 25 for it. But the only issue I had with the car, it was black, and I didn't necessarily want a black car.
Yeah.
So I then was trying to convince myself that I wanted a black car because I like the 4S.
Yeah.
But in reality, you can go with, for me personally, you can go without an option of, I don't know, a sports exhaust, because that can be modified later on. But if you're not sold on the colour of the car, you're never going to be totally happy with it. So I passed on that.
Okay.
Again, I could have bought that and sold it now and made some money, but that's not what I was in it for. I wanted a car to keep. And then I've eventually got into the exact same car that I had, the 997.1, 3.6 base Carrera in midnight blue.
Good colour.
And that was the thing that sold it to me. It was the colour. I was looking at, it was between that and silver. And where I'd had the silver, which I loved my silver one, because I'd had silver, the midnight blue, it was just the winner for me.
So was this one had more options? Was this a 2006 Mathieu as well?
So no, this is a late 2005. So it's got the bigger IMS. Yeah, it's got the bigger IMS bearing.
Okay.
It's got PASM, Bose, sunroof. Other than that, it's pretty stock. Other than that, but I wasn't looking for anything with loads of. I sort of realised that you can have loads of options, but how many of them do you actually use? The only one that I'm missing, and which you rightly correctly pointed out, was the exhaust. It is very soft. Currently on the car, on the 997.1.
But that's something you can fix. You only bought this car in, wasn't it April or May, right? Was it earlier in the year?
Yeah, May time. Yeah,
May.
Yeah.
So you found this car. So how many miles did it have on it again?
78,000.
Okay, so pretty low. Still pretty low mileage.
Yeah.
And this was found. Where did you find it?
So it was about 2 hours away from me.
Right.
So it was out west, past Oxford way. So yeah, it was a bit of a journey getting to go and see it.
Yeah, it's a bit of a drive.
And it was,
Did you do a PPI?
Yeah, I had a PPI done at Auto Farm. They're quite well known.
Good.
They're quite well known in the UK.
Yes.
So I had a PPI done there, and they were brilliant. They pointed out quite a few bits that I would never have even thought to look at. And that helped me get the price down quite significantly, because mechanically it's fine. Balls were totally clean.
Right.
No issues with IMS so mechanically it was sound. It was just, cosmetically there were a few bits need doing. And on the suspension, there was a few bits which needed looking at. So suspension arms, lower arms, one of the shocks was a little bit rusty, but not gone. But so little things like that, which I would never have seen, they picked up and told me about.
Okay. So these things, did you need to rectify these things when you bought the car, or you just left them and you're going to do them over time? You said you got a better price because of it, and that's the benefit of the PPI, right? That most of the listeners know that you get a PPI because you can actually, it's not just finding the faults, it's also finding what has to be done, so you can negotiate the price slightly down because you're going to have to eventually fix them. When I bought my car, I bought it from a dealer, but they had a they had a full inspection done or service done by Porsche Sydney, and they had all the list of the things that were going to be done, and I used that to negotiate. They wanted to use that to negotiate the price anyway, even though they probably upped the price too much in the beginning. Yeah. They did bring it down quite substantially. That trick that they always do.
Yeah.
So the things that had to be done though, were they things you had to do straight away after you bought the car?
I didn't have to, but I chose to because so for example, like suspension arms, they needed changing, and I feel that's something that's quite important to the drive, to the feel of the car.
Yeah.
And when I was driving, so when you hit a certain, let's call it 71 mile an hour. When you hit 70 mile an hour, you would feel a bit of vibration through the steering wheel, and that was due to the suspension, which needed looking at. So because I've been quite lucky. I've got a Porsche guy, so to speak.
Yep.
And I sort of booked in with him pretty early before I picked the car because I knew what needed to be done. I booked in with him and I had them done because I was able to save the money on the price. I had the money there to do.
That's good.
80% of the work. So
that's good. So on your Instagram, there's a picture of the car. If the listeners that can see it as well. I mean, it looks fantastic. You've got the good wheels, the best wheels, the classic wheels, the lobster claws. I was going to say Fuchs then, the lobster claws. Why you got yellow calipers? Did it come that way? It came with the yellow calipers?
No. So this is so. I'll take a little tiny step back actually, just before I go on to the calipers. But
yeah, of course.
So when I looked at the car, first time I looked at it, it was pretty overcast, pretty cloudy.
Right.
Bodywork looked fine, no sort of issues, didn't look anyway to me. Had the PPI done. They said, yeah, it looks fine. But when I got the car, in certain lights, you could see where the car, I think, had they call it gravel rash. Right. So where the kidneys of the car, the arches flare out. It looked like that had been resprayed.
Okay. And
in certain lights, it didn't look right to me.
Right.
So I had that rectified because I weren't happy with it. So again, that was a cost which I had to bear, but it was part.
Is that the photo where you've got it at Body Repairs London? That photo is a great photo. The car looks fantastic in that shot. It's a really cool shot.
And it makes such a difference. Having it done there, it makes a huge difference to how I appreciate the car. Just looking at it, it looks spot on. I'm really, really happy with it. But because I was getting that little bit of work done, I've always loved yellow calipers. They're just the brake calipers. I know a lot of people are purists who go, "Oh my God, what are you doing? That's disgusting. That's wrong. They don't belong on that car." But the yellow and the blue to me
it does look good.
Spot on. And I love it.
Yeah, it does look good.
So that was just something, my own personal taste.
Yeah, it's nice. It's a nice little mod, quick little mod. What else have you done? I noticed, so you got that. The wheels look in immaculate condition, by the way. The wheels are pretty good when you bought it. They're no curbing, or you had them fixed as well?
No, so they were in pretty good condition. There's a few little bits in there which I need to, I may get them redone, a little bit of a darker shade.
Right.
I like your wheels. I like the colour of your wheels on your 997.
Yep.
I may go a little bit darker because I think that would look nice against the blue. But I'm going to wait until the summer. I wouldn't do it now because it's coming up to winter. Yeah. They'll just get ruined again. So, so that's bar the bits that I had to have done. It's touch wood again. So far, so good.
And your windows, the windows of your car, they're not tinted, are they?
No.
Yeah, I really like that. I wouldn't tint them either. I don't know what they're really in London. I know mine are tinted, and I have actually mentioned I really am seriously thinking of getting the tint removed because I like that clean, see-through original look. I really do. I think I'm going to remove the tint on my car. I'm
not a big fan of the tint personally. It's a personal choice. I'm not a big fan of the tinting. I do like that clean, clear sort of look.
So let's just go back because you said, you've got the same car, sort of the same car. It's got a few more options, than the previous 997. So what is the regret though? You said it's just because of the price shifted, but you should have kept the previous 997 because the price has moved so much that you had to pay a lot more for this car. Is that the main reason?
That's the main reason. And I know we should avoid talking prices and because they're not investments, this and the other, but it's part and parcel. For me, it's part and parcel of the enjoyment and the hobby. You can't help it, and that's the main reason why I think if I had kept that one, I would have been a lot more. I'd have been a lot financially.
Okay.
I'd have been winning a lot more, so to speak.
I'm going to put you on the spot. Which car do you think is the better car? Do you think the one that you have now is more sorted than the silver one that you owned previously?
I'd say the one I have now, but only reason being is because where it needed a few bits doing, I know they've been done, and I know what's been done, and I know who's done them.
Yes.
So that is a big thing. So when buying a car, again, no disrespect to Quick Fit, but if someone's taken their 997 turbo to Quick Fit to have some work done, would you be happy having it's been done?
Yes.
But by someone who's not an expert in Porsche. So for me, knowing it's been done and who it's been done by it's important.
Yeah, and you've got it, like you said, you've got it sorted now. It's peace of mind. You know the things are fixed. You know, I'm sure there's other things you want to do. Is there anything else that you want to do to the car? Is there anything else you got planned? Any maintenance or mods you want planned to do on the car?
Yeah, so I'm booked in for the exhaust mod.
Okay.
So the Gundo hack or whichever way, I guess, be very similar to your Fister exhaust that you've got on yours. But that's.
I still think Gundo's. I still think the Gundo's louder. I could be wrong. I keep saying it is, and I don't know where I got it from, but I still think the Gundo's a louder mod.
Maybe. I noticed they use a 1.5 inch pipe, which I believe is a standard across the board. And the guy I'm booked in with is sort of well renowned. I know he done a video on YouTube for, is it Matt? Someone Carwell? Is it Carwell?
Okay.
Yeah, there's a video on YouTube, and he done the work, and he's quite renowned for doing this sort of mod. So, I'm booked in to get that done.
You'll love it. It'll make such a big difference. It'll make such a big difference. It's great. Yeah.
Yeah. Because having the 3.6, having the 996 with the sports exhaust, the difference is huge. And that's the one thing it is definitely lacking. I've tried to, I've been through the Dartford Tunnel a couple of times, and you sort of drop it down into the second gear, keep it at like 20 odd mile an hour, 30 mile an hour, but the sound it's not the same. It's not the same, but it's still iconic 911 though, right? I mean, when I first got my 911, first time I drove it, and you drive it a little bit, you hear it and you go, okay, this is I've got a Porsche. It still sounds like that 911 sound that you always imagined, you know what I mean? Yeah. But it's not until you get the mod and you go, wow, it can even be better. Exactly. It's so much better. It really is. It really is so much better. Exactly.
And what else? Anything else you got planned for it? So the mod?
So I've had lowering springs. I've put it on IBAC lowering springs.
Oh, okay.
But I may change them to the H&Rs. The fronts are perfect, but the rears, it's still a little bit too high for me. So I may do that next year. Okay. I've put in the telephone module. So it's just the Bluetooth connectivity thing. Okay. So I can play Bluetooth.
Which one did you use? Was it a special one, or just those Chinese ones you can buy on Amazon?
Yeah, I bought one off eBay. And I had a guy, a car audio place, fit it for me. And to be fair, it's really good. It works really well. They put the microphone up through the A pillar and stuff like that. So a lot better than I could have done myself. So
that's good.
So I've had that done. I've had the lowering springs. I had a short shift kit fitted when I was getting a lot of work done. But there was a guy, again, on one of the forums who manufactures the short shift kits so you replace the plastic bearing with a metal. So it's a lot more sort of rifle sharp. Yeah. But in reality,
it's like Function First, right? Because Function First, Simon, who's been on a previous owner story, sent me the link for it. And that's the same thing where the short shifter kit, I've got the 997 short shifter kit, and it replaces the plastic parts with metal parts. Is that a similar thing?
No, this is a guy who manufactures it. I was just on one of the forums just trying to read up about short shift kits and differences and this, that and the other. And this is just a gentleman. He's quite active on the forums, and a lot of people have bought from him, and he does it. He manufactures and sells them himself. He's not a company. Okay. Or how does it feel? I know of. Yeah, it feels good. It took a little bit, brutally honest, how much difference? I'm not sure how good it is, if I'm being brutally honest. I'm trying to convince, again, it's one of those things, where I've bought it and had it fitted, I'm trying to convince myself maybe that it's better than it is. It's tighter because it's newer.
Yeah.
Because that one had 70,000 odd miles go through it. But I don't know.
It's a weird thing.
I'm torn. If I'm honest, I'm torn on it, to be fair.
Yeah,
I'm torn. So.
I can't even remember what mine's like. I remember thinking it wasn't that great. And then Steve drove my car and he said, no, it definitely feels different. But like even today, I'm thinking like I haven't really driven it enough with the short shifter kit. So I'll reserve my opinion on it until I actually get back to Sydney and drive it again. But I mean, it has to be slightly tighter than the old ones. You know what I mean? Whatever you get done, it has to be slightly tighter.
Agreed.
Because the throw is way too long on the on the standard.
Yeah.
Okay, so 997.1, you're back in it, you're enjoying it. Have you got that's it, right? You're not looking at anything else for a while. You're going to keep this one. And I know you were talking about values. You know, you're talking, and we always talk about values like we said before. But you were saying how, you know, if you would have kept your other one. But 997s are not going, they're not going down. You know what I mean? And like you said, we don't look at it as an asset. We look at it as it's the experience, it's our hobby, you know, and if we can keep our money along the way, well, that's even better. That's a bonus. But I think even where you've bought the 997 now, it's not going down. That's for sure. It's only going up.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think there's been so many big hitters to our sort of economy and lifestyle in the last few years. Brexit, or in the UK, Brexit, coronavirus.
Yeah,
I cannot see price unless there's some global absolute landslide of a. I don't think they'll go down, and I bought it to enjoy it, and I'm removing the financial side from my memory, because I think if you have that as a constant in your mind, it will ruin your enjoyment.
You can't think about that.
And I bought the car to take it out. I bought the car to take it out and drive it and enjoy it, and that's what I'm doing at the moment. And that's sort of that, and that's the main reason why I'm not letting myself get too bogged down in it, because otherwise it just ruins the enjoyment. It totally takes away from why we all love why we all love the brand, and why we all enjoy the brand and the community. So
and you can't like we've always said, you can't get hung up on miles either. You should be driving it, you should be enjoying it, all those sort of things. What about drives, though? Because, you know, we're at the end of the podcast. We're actually gone a little bit over, almost an hour and a half, believe it or not.
Oh, wow.
So what about favorite drives? I mean, do you have the opportunity? I mean, in the UK, you know, you have the opportunity to go to Europe to get out on a holiday. Is there any future plans of taking the car on some of those famous roads? Or is there a road in the UK that you really enjoy driving on that you want to share with the listeners if they come to the UK, like in your local area?
Yeah. Well, one drive I've planned, I want to go to the Porsche Museum.
Yes.
Take. That's the one thing I've wanted to do. Take the car, go to the Porsche Museum, and also I want to, if I can, next year, depending on time, money, etc. So I want to try and get to the Belgian Grand Prix. Again, that would be another drive in the Porsche. But in terms of local roads, I'm not really. So at some point, we'll try and get to the F1. But in terms of local drives, I've sort of only recently been trying to get out on early Saturday mornings and try and explore, because we've got my daughter's 2 now, so it takes up quite a lot of the time off, which is, love it to bits, but if you ever want a drive, it's never going to be an all-day thing. Yeah. So near to me, a friend of mine told me about, there's a reservoir which is just through Billericay, which it's apparently quite well known on the forums. Not fully aware. I've never come across it. So I've driven up there once or twice, and it is a nice drive. A few of the country lanes around there are pretty good, and they're not fast roads, and I think that's what I enjoy about it the most as well. They're not roads where you're going to be driving 70 mile an hour all the time. Sometimes you're going through some of these twisty roads and you're maybe doing 40, 45, but it's just it's just that enjoyment of going through and hearing the noise and the feel of the car, because these cars are very analog. You feel everything through it. You don't miss anything. Being manual as well is being what gear you're in and knowing to change down, and you get that noise and you dip around the quick. And they're the sort of that's what I've been sort of doing recently. So I think it's called Hanningfield Reservoir. I think it's called.
Fantastic.
But there's a straight. I went up there. Sorry, let me just get my phone out.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing about the UK, though, isn't it? It is those back roads, it is those country roads, and I don't know what the speed limit is, but I've been on some of, I've been on the road out to, with a friend in the UK out to Goodwood from here in central London to Goodwood, and it's just those roads and the feeling of the 997. You feel the weight transfer. You're not always going super fast, but it's just the experience, which is really good. And you're in the UK as well. It's so iconic when you're driving through those roads.
Yeah. I follow quite other guys that I've seen and listened to on your on the podcasts, and a lot of those on Instagram. You see some of the roads that especially up north. There's some absolutely stunning roads, which I do intend to get to next year in Wales and
Scotland and Wales.
So there are a few trips that I do want to do next year. Looking at some of the pictures, there's a gentleman, Peaks Porsche, I think. Some of his some of the roads he drives on.
Great photos.
I'm so jealous.
Great photos. That his spider always looks fantastic. Yeah, there's great. That's absolutely fantastic up there. Yeah,
it just makes me so jealous. So there's definitely some trips booked planned for next year. I've just got to convince the wife to come with me as well, so that way I can stay out for longer.
Sounds good. You got the baby seat in the back yet?
Yeah, we've got a baby seat in the back. I guess, and that was another. I can't call it a reason to convince someone to buy it, but I know we can fit the baby in the back. It's fine. It's the family car.
That's why you need a 911, not a Boxster, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's got a back seat. Matthew, we're at the end. Thank you so much. Is there anything you'd like to share with the listeners before we go?
No. Just again, Michael, thank you, Steve, and all the guys who have taken part in the owner stories. It's been brilliant, especially during lockdown and everyone was having a hard time. And it was just that community. I haven't really got many friends who are into Porsche, so it's been really good to hear owners talk about their cars and how much they enjoy it. It's fantastic. And I think, like your last owner said, is get out, get what you can afford and enjoy now. And we don't know how long we've got, and just enjoy it. And again, thank you, brilliant. Love the work you and Steve do on the podcast. That's
great. Thanks so much. Yeah, and I know you said to me you've been listening since the very first episode as well. So thanks for supporting and thanks for that. That's great. All right, Matthew, thank you so much for being on Owner Stories today.
No, thank you, Michael. And apologies for a bit waffly, but I was just enjoyed the chat.
Not at all. All right, everyone. That's it for PorscheCooled Owner Stories. Like I said, I'm going to remember the number. Number 59 with Matthew coming in from the UK, coming in from London with his 2005 997.1 911 Carrera 2 Midnight Blue 6-speed, the only way to go. And he's a multiple Porsche owner. He's owned a few, as you have heard. That's about it for today. Thanks for listening. Bye for now.